This is the debate on, I've forgotten the debate. What's the debate? Desperately seeking innovation. There we go. Madonna, eat your heart out. Desperately seeking innovation. Are telcos really driving innovation? So many things that we want to ask, so little time. So what I shall do is sit over here and ask our first expert witness, who is returning from popular demand. Francesca, please come and stand up and deliver our first expert witness. Francesca Serravalle, Head of Infrastructure and Energy at Vodafone UK.
And my water.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. I'll go free flow again. I hope I will be lucky again, like the first time. So if you had asked me a few years ago whether we were bold enough, brave enough, and quick enough, I would say no, right? But if you ask me today, I would say, you know, we are really bold and we're really brave because the industry is going through quite some challenges, and we are transforming those challenges into opportunities, really investing hundreds of millions every year to transform our network, to transform our operation, to innovate the way we engage with the customer, to innovate partnership model, and to innovate business model as well. And I'm just, you know, if I start looking at the way what we are doing and how we are investing in infrastructure, really, I mean, that there is a lot in terms of enabling high capacity infrastructure, expanding key core sites to host the telco cloud. It really means that, you know, we have to increase power and space and really spend for each site 10 to 50 million to enable to host the cloud platform for the future 5G core. We're also changing the way we do the topology. It used to be very reactive. Now we want to make it demand-driven, looking at where the demand is, using geospatial analysis. And then finally, we also want to change not only the way we offer connectivity services through SDN and AV, but also automating the life cycle of building the network. So we know that normally we go through a plan, design, and build. What we're trying to do is really create a digital thread across all this process to automate the high-level design, the low-level design, and also the as-built. Operation, we all know, right? We want to be self-organizing, self-heal. We want to be data and AI-driven. And what I like is that 2 years ago, I was talking a lot about we don't want this vertical approach to automate, you know, the fault management, the configuration management, and the performance management with different platforms, all vertical. We really want an horizontal platform, and we want our own data scientists to build use case on top. And we have achieved, we are doing that. We're using our own data scientists to build consumer analytics, network analytics, and operation use case as well. And I think what we also are doing, which I want to mention the last 18 seconds, is that we are innovating in energy as well, in the way we do energy, in making the infrastructure as green as possible, simplifying the network through rationalization, innovating the way we procure energy through PPA, but also using big data platform to manage the energy. Well, I made it again.
Perfect. Francesca, thank you very much indeed for that. And our second expert witness, Azhar, please come up to the lectern. Azhar Sayeed, who is the Senior Director, TME Technology and Strategy at Red Hat.
Thank you very much, Guy. Good afternoon. So this morning we've had some interesting discussions from the Aztecs to the wheat and to the horses for courses. But I don't think the Spanish won the war because they were more brave. I'm sure there was innovation there. I don't think we started to realize that wheat was a grain that was useful to us, and that there was innovation there in terms of how we could prepare, cook, and use that. And last but not least, in terms of horses for courses, not every horse wins the Triple Crown, at least in the US, if you follow the Triple Crown. So it's all about, you know, how you utilize the information that's available to you and how do you actually innovate and put that into practice. Same thing applies for telcos too. I mean, telcos have to innovate. Telcos must innovate. Otherwise, somebody else will eat their lunch. I've had some very interesting conversations. Nick actually earlier explained about Axiata in terms of what they're doing, how they're innovating. What TELUS is doing is innovation in terms of actually driving different types of use cases, including telemedicine and agriculture. with respect to how they utilize their 5G network. What Verizon's doing is innovation in terms of how they're building out and extending the cloud platform from their core data centers out to the edge and to the far edge, and actually using that same cloud platform. They're also working with hyperscaler, but what they're doing is actually building new use cases and actually driving more revenue towards their bottom line. So what China Mobile did several years ago was to actually provide a platform to the companies to come and use it and build their own use cases at the edge and show how edge could be really beneficial. That was very interesting in terms of how they drove innovation. So in my personal opinion, you have to do that. There's no way you can just bank on the connectivity business and not do it. Now, then the question becomes, how do you go down that path and what do you need to do? I think a lot of conversations this morning we've had around, we need to do better in terms of mindset change. We need to do better in terms of, business and policy change. We need to do better in terms of people change. Of course, all of those things. But I think of all those, the fundamental thing we need to really start with is a mindset change. Unless we talk about carrier grade. Carrier grade is so old, last century, really. You really need to talk about cloud. You really need to talk about how dynamic things are, how rapidly things are moving, how quickly you can learn from those failures and actually change and adopt those changes and actually deliver new capability. You don't need to worry about those hardware availability paradigms anymore. You need to look at it as throwaway hardware, throwaway software. So really, that change needs to come. It has to be within. And when that comes, then you can really, truly innovate and build new services. Thank you.
Perfect. Azhar, thank you very much indeed. Nice for your time. Great. Thank you, Azhar. And our third expert witness, Sandeep, please come up. Our third expert witness is Sandeep Rathatha, who's Head of Strategy, Innovation and 5G IoT at Virgin Media Business, O2 Business, rather.
Thank you. So the telco industry is at a point, a critical juncture where innovation is not an option, but it's really vital for survival and progress. And throughout my time in this industry in various roles in innovation, really noticed more recently the accelerated pace is even more evident. And it's already clear, we've talked about it today, that telcos are moving beyond the core connectivity business and moving into providing businesses with industry-specific solutions, really helping them on their digital transformation and underpinning that with technologies like IoT, private networks, cloud, and cybersecurity. But then we're also seeing our consumer expectations really changing. People living in this constantly connected world really are thinking beyond what they get from their smartphone and really thinking about all the devices, the services, the platforms that they're working with, and how do they receive those and get those seamlessly and instantly as well. And it's really important to note the landscape around the telcos is really changing as well. We've seen all the tech players investing significantly. The scale of magnitude compared to the telco investments is very different. So it's really encouraging the telcos to really start to evaluate their strategies and how they innovate. And so really this means for telcos adapting and shifting that means of innovating often away from long-term R&D where you're looking to really develop intellectual property and gains from that to different strategies and more open models as well. So to share a couple of the models that we've been working with, firstly, it's open innovation. So how do you engage with startups and scale-ups, leverage your corporate venture capital, bring the agility that the startups provide, but then deliver combined solutions and services using your reach and your channel. And then, of course, you've got co-innovation. So this is where you can leverage your telco's networks, your data sets, and foster innovation by really creating solutions where you're no longer relying on your internal developers, but taking the talent around the world to create solutions really geared towards your customer problems as well. And then finally, strategic partnerships and telco industry collaborations. And these are really important when you want to think about how you scale and create consistency globally as well. And I thought I'd share with you an example from this weekend where we partnered Virgin Media O2 with Ericsson and enabled one of our first network slices on our 5G standalone network. As we partnered with a company called Hadoop, which is providing an augmented reality esport gaming service at the Comic-Con event in Birmingham. And what's really unique here is where we provided this esport gaming solution that allowed people from around the world to get together and game with the benefit of having that dedicated consistency and the bandwidth and capacity. But then we're also streaming and broadcasting content in a busy environment to allow millions of people to watch the service through the Hadoop channel as well. So this is a great example of partnership and collaboration with players coming together. And so to end with, I think it's really important to remember that generating ideas is really just the beginning of that innovation journey. And what we really got to work on is working at pace with partners to really think about how you mobilize your teams, your partners, start to think about how you fail fast and scale your solutions really quickly to make a meaningful business value as well.
Sandeep, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you. And our next expert witness is Neil McRae. Neil, come on up. Neil McRae, Chief Network Strategist at Juniper Networks.
Hello. The thing I'm proudest about Philip's time at BT was the fact that he listened to me about customers. And the first 5 words I said to Philip was customer, customer, customer. And because it infuriates me when we have discussions where we don't even talk about them. And desperately seeking innovation, I would say desperately seeking innovation that makes a difference, that allows us to make money in the world. If you think about what we do as telcos, and I say telcos, I mean the entire ecosystem, because we are an ecosystem of vendors, suppliers, regulators, et cetera, et cetera. Together, we change the world for people. We don't just, send a box with a phone in it, as important as that is, but we actually give people an environment where they can make a difference, an environment where they can be things that they couldn't be. And I point to kind of YouTubers, content creator is now an official job title. I know that because when you go to insurance and you select, what do you do? Content creator is now on there. And that's been made available because of the work that we do in our industry. But when I think about innovation, I feel that sometimes we get too focused on innovation that customers don't care about. And that's my big kind of challenge for the discussion, which is, how do we go from a world that has as much on the front page of our industry news cover people like TelecomTV and the other guys out there, that isn't Open RAN, right? It's telco launches this service that makes a difference to all of these people. How do we go to talk about stuff that customers care about day in, day out, rather than stuff that they don't even understand? And I think part of my time during BT, I used to run a kind of parish tech support line for BT, and every month I would go to this tech support area and get beaten up, predominantly because customers didn't understand what they were buying. And if we stand a chance of really delivering innovation, it starts with listening to our customers and the problems that they have to enable us to drive innovation that changes their world and enable us to make money and invest in the future. And the final part of that is we need a platform to deliver this future innovation. And we talked about cloud earlier on. For me, Telco Cloud is the service delivery platform for future services. We've built all the connectivity stuff, but we forgot about actually how do we deliver services to customers. That's it from me.
Thank you, Neil.
Neil, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, and so we have our final expert witness of the year to the lectern. Please, Paul Adams.
Very slowly, because it's a really long way.
Yes, very slowly. Walk of shame. Marketing Director at Nokia Europe. Paul.
Sorry, old school. Well, firstly, I would like to thank the Academy, my agent, my family, and most of all, my dog. Without her, I wouldn't go to the pub quite so much, and I wouldn't be the man I am today, which is drunk most of the time. She likes the pub. She likes the pub a lot, but she never buys drinks, which is a bit annoying. What does this Academy Award have to do with innovation? Well, a bit more about that later. There are some very important points to be made on innovation, but we need to learn from history. The transformation that was created in the 20th century by increased funding for scientific research was nothing short of remarkable. That was mostly driven, at that time, by individual philanthropy. Thomas Edison electrified the world from his lab at Menlo Park. The Carnegie Foundation was the principal funder of Edwin Hubble. By the mid-1960s, governments had stepped up. The US was spending 0.6% of GDP on research funding. As a result, the internet, GPS, and space telescopes followed. That was the golden era, many say, as the rules have now changed. These days, governments and investors want to know where their money is going, and there's an alarming amount of bureaucracy to contend with. 2/5 of a scientist's time is spent doing other things other than research, looking for money. One study found that researchers spent a combined time of 614 years applying for grants from a single funding body in one single year. However, there is some light at the end of the tunnel as tech billionaires are putting their hands in their pockets, but the biggest challenge is that nobody really knows what approach works best. For example, the transistor was invented in 1947 by Bell Labs. That was part of AT&T, as part of a program that was pursuing commercial technology. But technology innovation today is typically created by the vendors and not the CSPs. We all know that it is in a vendor's best interest to create technology that allows customers to launch and monetize services. However, they should perhaps collaborate more closely, perhaps around smart infrastructure. It is also critical that CSPs, vendors, and others who are at the forefront of research, such as the outstanding technology universities we have in the UK, including Bristol and Cambridge, are incentivized to work much more closely together. Logically, governments also have a role to play. As The Economist recently commented, governments should start treating the search for best ways to fund science as if it were in itself a scientific problem. What does this discussion about innovation have to do with an Oscar? Well, Bell Labs has an Academy Award. This was given to Edward C. Vente for multicellular high-frequency horn and receiver. They also have 2 Grammys, one in 2016 for work on stereo sound, and one in 2006 for outstanding technical contributions to the recording field. So there you go. Looking beyond our traditional sector, some examples of innovation where telecoms and entertainment meet. Can we go to the pub yet? Thanks.
Soon, Paul, soon. Thank you very much. The time is swiftly approaching. Thank you very much, everyone, all our expert witnesses. I got so excited during those presentations, I broke my pen. I'm easily excited. Right, before we have our debate, we are going across to ask the question. Graham, do we have a final motion for the
I hope we do, Guy. I hope we do. I hope we do. It's about to appear on the screen. Here it is. Right, okay. The final motion of the day, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, lords, dogs, is telcos are primarily reacting to rather than generating innovation. Very controversial. We flip the Alexa coin, and I am speaking in favour of this motion. So let me stand. Let me stand, and before I really get into this, let me tell you that recently we, as in my wife and I, redecorated our living room, and we bought new furniture. And it looks very nice, very nice. And so when our friends come around, you know, my wife likes to show them the new living room. She takes them into the living room. She says, look, come and see what we've done. Come and see what we've done. Here's the new sofa. Here's the new chairs, the new painting, the new coloured walls. We chose this. We chose this. We chose this. We chose this. And actually, and she says, we chose this, right? I mean, the reality is that she chose the sofa, the colour of the walls, the chairs, the carpet, the rug, the this, the that, the mirror. And I chose one thing, which is a cushion with a picture of the Beatles on it.
Not the TV?
No, I didn't choose the TV. She chose that as well. So I chose a cushion with a picture of the Beatles on it. Now, why am I telling you this? Because in this story, my wife is Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook, Nokia, Huawei. She's Juniper. She's all of those companies. She's Red Hat. And I am the telco. Right? She's chosen everything, and I get to choose the cushion. Now, to Neil's point, the cushion is very customer focused, right? I could have had a cushion with a flower on it, right? I could have had a plain cushion. I chose a cushion with the Beatles on it because I know that people are going to like that. I like it, and the rest of the family likes it, and visitors like it too. So it's very customer focused. But at the end of the day, it's just the cushion, right? And to Paul's point, Bell Labs, yeah, absolutely, used to be part of AT&T, but isn't anymore, is it? Not anymore. And so Maybe 20 years ago, I could have chosen the sofa and the cushion. Now I can only choose the cushion. Right? So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying you can't innovate. I'm not saying you can't be customer focused, but that's why you must support the motion. Thank you very much.
So first of all, great. I asked Graham to pour me a glass of water after I did the Philip interview. He poured me fizzy water, which you never drink before you speak on stage, right? He sabotaged. If I start belching over my microphone, you know that. And then for a second, I thought you said a cushion with a penis on it. I thought, you know,
I could have had that as well.
you could have done. That would have been very, very customer focused. Yeah. So whenever, and obviously we're trying to round off a day thinking about the industry, and I think the obsession of the industry, not Graham's obsessions because they're quite different, but the obsessions of the industry around technology and the building blocks and the bits and bytes and that inward-looking view, I think is part, that model has broken down. We know that the supply chains have changed. I do agree with Neil. Neil, we spend way too much time focused on a topic like Open RAN, which is important, but it's out there with other things. So the innovation that I think, and Philip touched upon this a little bit in his answers, that actually changing the way, innovating the way we run the businesses, and the word ideation came into my head as well while we're talking about this. You know, just getting ideas, making sure that, to Neil's point, we listen to customers, but more importantly, we listen to the people inside the organization. So innovating around the ways in which we can improve the way the company functions, the way the industry functions. And I think we also get obsessed about innovation coming in from outside, from the hyperscalers, from the software industry. I think we had it in various debates during the day about more cooperation between the players within the industry. You know, we typically feel as though we're always beaten up against all the other telcos in a market and trying to outdo them and so on. I think there is a innovation in terms of the business model. There's, of course, innovation in terms of technology. We know we need to innovate. We need to reduce the cost. But the innovation in terms of how we drive it, of course, it's got to come from the ideas and the people driving the organisations. And I think one thing that came out from Philip's comments that when he came into the bit, and I deliberately said, "Did you come in with your eyes wide open?" Because our industry has been a problem. And actually, I'll take you back to the first debate this morning. I was quite surprised the way the vote went, because usually with this group of people, we're within the industry, we're thinking about the industry, we're very positive about the industry. That's one of the first times I believe we've acknowledged that there's actually a lot of work to do, and we shouldn't just be looking inward at ourselves, but looking outside. We've got to improve the way we run the industry. Of course we have. We've got to make sure we focus more on the customer. But there is plenty of innovation that can come from within the people within the industry, making sure that we do deliver the services customers want, and creating a culture of actually satisfying those customers and working with the customers and working with partners. I think all too often, and perhaps this is part of the journey that we've come from when we deregulated. When was BT privatized? 82, was it, or 83 or something like that? You know, and then the 96 Act in the US. It's taken decades for this to filter through. And the problem is we've been thinking about internally about innovating against each other. And actually we need to be thinking about the role the industry has in the broader ecosystem of delivering services. And we're perfectly capable of doing that. So we may be following some of the technology innovation that we thought we used to do in the labs in Martlesham. Oh, so what's it called now? At Astral Park, yeah. At Astral Park or in Bell Labs. But actually, there is plenty of innovation within this industry, and of course, cooperation with all those other partners, learning from each other, working together, finding a common goal for the industry. And I think that's part of that challenge about the government stakeholder, the regulator, and all those things that we talked about in the past. So there's plenty of innovation. Let's not do ourselves down as an industry. We play a fundamental role in it. We won't control the ecosystem end to end, but we will play a fundamental part of underpinning it and supporting it. So I would ask you, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone else, please vote against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Graham, for your comments about the motion. For and against, right, we have, looking at the big clock, we've got about 30 minutes to sort out innovation. So, are we up for the challenge? Do we have hands coming into the air? We do. Robert, let's come across straight to you at the front. Make the microphone, get some air miles in. We should be.
No.
No.
We will be in a second.
Yeah.
No.
You can give me a fizzy now, don't you?
Have we got a second mic? Go and bring the second mic over. Alex, please.
No.
Robert, you're getting a second mic any second now.
You sure?
There you go.
We've got a great panel here, great panel all day. Part of what's interesting about this industry is the increasing mix of companies who are working outside of telco as well as telco from a supplier side and so on. The process of innovation surely can't be that different within telecom than it is in other industries. Even big, conservative, difficult, challenging industries like finance, avionics manufacturing. Does the panel have any thoughts on how the process of innovation maybe is being learned from those other industries and what can telecom learn about that process, even acknowledging its uniqueness? Maybe there are things that we can do to improve the innovation process. Any thoughts on that?
Good question. Great. Azhar, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I can start off. Look, if you look at the financial industry, the change that they have had in the last 10 years has been massive. The whole fintech industry in terms of the way that they evolve, payment systems, everything, how you bank and how you actually invest, everything has changed. Why did that change? How did that change? It's not like they did not want to innovate. They wanted to innovate. There was customer demand, and then certainly they did it. I think in the telecom case, but fundamentally what they went through is a mind shift that we have to evolve and use these type of digital services to be able to get to what the customer really wants. And if customer is your focus, same thing should happen in the telecom industry as well. I think one of the fundamental things that need to happen within the telecom industry is that mindset needs to change. We have telecoms today still procuring infrastructure the way they used to procure boxes. This is cloud infrastructure you're talking about. They still don't know how to procure services and software the same, and they still think that I'm going to procure it in racks and boxes and switches. That's the problem, right? This is what needs to really shift. They have to adopt open methodologies, open organization, open mindsets. They have an open source software. Unless they do that, they really can't change. And we see this happening across the globe with some of the telcos who have actually started to adopt in various different places within their organization. And they're reaping the benefits of that. Or have they fully changed yet? Probably not, but is that happening? Absolutely.
Francesca.
Yeah. And I think we are doing that, right? We are not anymore innovating with just a technology-led mindset, but with a business value-led. We want to go towards outcome-driven proposition, and that's because we know that the customer expectations have changed. They're not looking for value prop of technology. They're looking for the value that the technology can deliver to address their operational business challenge. And we can do that if we work with the bigger partner ecosystem, which means running innovative partner program, driving synergy not only on the technical level, but also operationally, commercially, but also giving access to the ecosystem. We know that our customers want ecosystem-driven proposition. And when we think about giving access to the ecosystem, it doesn't mean just shaking hands. It means that, do you know where the ecosystem is? It's in Slough, it's in Telehouse, Equinix, means digging to connect our core network to their data centers, means changing the model we have with the likes of Equinix from a transactional model to do something together to address and increase the target addressable market. I think where we need to innovate, it's the go-to-market. I think it's important that we drive joint solution, joint value prop, joint sales with the bigger ecosystem. But I believe there are still some greedy players that want to use the service providers as a channels. I think that is where we need to change.
Thanks, Francesca. Any more comments?
Yeah, I'll just add from my experience, often sharing innovation best practices with FMC organizations, travel, transport. I think, as you said, being really customer focused is key, and that's what we've got to learn from the tech and telco industry. The other key point to add is really about how you test and trial, right? So being ready to test, trial, and then fail fast really quickly as well. So not over-investing. And I think taking those steps is one of the key learnings I've been putting into practice here as well.
Okay, thanks very much. Neil?
Yeah, I mean, Robert, I think it's a really good question. And I think, so I studied the process of innovation at Sloan School of Management. And actually what you learn about there are the companies that really do it well and how they do it. So I spent about 3, maybe 4 weeks at BMW in Munich. And they have a place called the Project House. If you haven't seen this place, you should Google it because you'll learn from it. And what they did, and I tried to do a little bit of this in my role, which is they position people together to capture innovation. So unsurprisingly, the guy that's in charge of tires sits next to the guy that's in charge of brakes because they have a relationship, and they have a whole design. You don't when you get a job at BMW, you're given a seat for that role. You're not given a desk that you just wander into or work from home. Hey, we want you to sit there because we want to capture all that innovation. And there's so much we could learn from organizations like that, and they trial stuff. And this building in the middle is the sculpture of the car. And actually, if you're a product development guy who's actually about building the floor to build the car, to actually see the car, you have to go past the people designing the car, and it just generates conversations and engagement, right? And actually, I used to work with Sandeep at BT, and we would have these accidental sessions all the time, but we would never act on them. We had no easy way of trialing stuff and doing stuff. Like, well, we want to trial this, and we'd have to get all these consumers together, we'd have to get them on and it was just such a heavy lift to actually trial anything with customers. And there was always a fear that we might break something. Today is the kind of 53rd anniversary of Apollo 17 launching. I'm wearing the badge. And Gene Cernan, the commander of Apollo 17, said, if you don't try, you'll never know how good you are. And at Juniper, it's one of the reasons I joined Juniper is we have a thing called Beyond Labs, which is all about enabling service providers to try stuff and enterprise customers. Hey, come and break this. Help us break it. Help us iterate it. Help us drive it. And what I see in our industry is shrinking of R&D departments everywhere, and all the telcos, right? Hey, we need more ops people, or we don't want to let the ops people go, so hey, we let a few folks go in R&D, no one will notice. People are noticing big time. And I think if you were to draw a correlation between R&D teams that are out there pathfinding and the scale of them over the last 10 years and plot telco share prices, I think you would find a correlation. So how do we reinvigorate some of the amazing design teams that invented optical fiber, that actually invented Netflix 20 years before we even knew that we needed it. And as long as those keep shrinking, it's hard to see how we'll capture that innovation, because organizationally, the process of innovation, we're doing nothing to capture these things. And hey, you want to have an innovation discussion? You phone the vendor or the chipset guy, and look, we're here to help, but we don't in the vendor space, we don't understand as much about your customer as you do. And that's where the value is. So, I think we really need to rethink about how we create ideas, how we capture them, how we then take them to trial and testing, and then how we actually get them in the hands of customers. Because until we've got something in the hands of customers, you don't really know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. And I'll use my hairdressing example from before. Sold like hotcakes after one customer tried something that took freaking a year and a half for us to build for some crazy reason.
Great, thanks everyone. Paul?
I kind of building on what you said, really, which I think it's about definitions. So, companies like Nokia and Juniper and others, we spend billions a year on research, literally billions a year. But I think it depends what your definition is. You went to Bell Labs in Cambridge, they could show you some stuff which is awesome. So they'll show you, they've invented an earpiece that actually measures things like blood pressure. So it's this staggering stuff, right? It's really at the edge of what's possible. So that innovation is still happening. But if I think I've been in telecoms industry since I was 21. So that's what, 10-ish years probably. And, and
You've been on that cocktail again.
I have. Yeah, you're right. The one you gave me. That one. And if I think about when I moved from the service provider into vendors, I was amazed at the innovation that was happening in the vendors that wasn't happening in the service providers. But it depends what your definition is. I used to work, very briefly, I worked for a company called Energis. Does anybody remember Energis?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? So I was the product manager for Frame Relay and ATM. Right? And I was a contractor for a company called Newbridge. And I went to, this is to your point, I went to talk to some customers because we had zero revenue. The product had been launched for 18 months and there was zero revenue, right? And Energis were pissed off because they bought this thing from Newbridge and they were like, can you fix it? So what I did, I went to talk to some customers. And I went, why are you not buying this? And they went, because we don't understand it, we don't know what it's for. So I went, brilliant. So I went away and I created a service package that was designed for ISPs. And I took the revenue from £0 to £1 million in 10 months. Is that innovation? I guess it is. So it depends what your definition is, I think.
Yeah. Quite right. Thanks very much, everyone. Let's go this side of the room if we can. If you've got the microphone, Alex, this side of the room, there's about 3 hands up. Oh, right in front of you. That's Charlie.
Thanks.
I'll go around.
Charlie Ashton from Napatech. So I guess if we're trying to judge how effective telcos are at generating innovation, then maybe a good question for the panel would be, what are the leading innovations that have come out of the telco community in, I don't know, maybe the last 3 years? Perhaps pick one each.
All right, there's a challenge. Who wants to go first? Are there 3 leading innovations that you can pick? Or leading innovation?
Maybe I can start.
Yeah.
I did give a couple of examples as part of my talk. I think innovation, you have to define innovation. Innovation doesn't need to be fundamental. It can be incremental. And I think there's business model innovation, there's new service innovation. I gave the example of TELUS that's actually doing some really wonderful work in the area of telemedicine and in the area of agriculture, smart agriculture. And somebody was here from TM Forum in Copenhagen. There were actually 20 plus projects that were displayed with telcos and vendors partnership around creating new capabilities and new services. Some of them included this stuff that I gave the example of, which is the smart agriculture. It was one of the examples, but there were 20 plus. And there were all sorts of service providers that were part of that mix, or telcos that were part of the mix. From NTT to Vodafone to, you name it. Pretty much everybody was there, Verizon to TELUS to Belcan. And they all had something innovative to show. Now, if you look at Verizon as an example in terms of how they built their edge cloud and edge services, they're offering some new, really wonderful capability, not the standard gaming platform. And of course, those are things that do generate money and revenue for them. But they're also offering some new capabilities, such as things like cloud analytics, location-based information. I mean, we talked a lot about location stuff this morning. They're doing it. So there are people who are doing it around the globe in terms of these type of things. And I would definitely see more and more of them in the future.
I'll mention a few. One is using the IoT platform, our own IoT platform, to create a digital twin of the radio base station. And that helps also, it feeds into the big data platform to do smart energy. Another use case where really we ingest all type of data from passive infrastructure and active infrastructure to do automated energy management and energy optimization. And obviously also all the innovation that we're doing around edge-enabled application. We have our own innovation center where we work with, cloud platform providers and also the app providers to innovate into smart health.
Great. Yes, happy to share lots of examples. My favorite one being the one recently we've developed with the example I shared about co-innovation. So how do you invest and work with the startup and scale-up community? One example is a company called AuraVision, really helping deliver better insights in retail environments using a technology called computer vision. And through our Wire initiative owned by Telefonica, we invested in the startup and scale-up and created a product called O2 Spatial Insights, which we've now successfully rolled out across our retail estate in our O2 stores, giving really great, better insight around where people are moving around the stores and being able to place your products better as well. So an example of how to co-innovate with others.
Yeah, man, I'm trying to figure out which ones to list. There's so many. Streaming telemetry came out of a collaboration between a number of operators. Open Cache, another collaboration, deployed into everywhere now and saving operators tons of money. MPLS, partly created by BT, which our entire industry now depends upon. I think there's dozens and dozens of them. There's using telephone boxes to put smart cells into them. It sounds really stupid, but actually that's innovative because it turns out 5G, 3.5 gigahertz at street level works pretty badly. There's so many, I encourage you to, if you've got one of the telcos that have got labs, how often do you go visit them? And they'll host you, they'll take you up there and show some of the amazing work that they're doing. Quantum networking, quantum key exchange. So, all the stuff that's been stolen from hacks that's encrypted, there's people, well, it's safe, it's encrypted for maybe 5 or 6 years. Then we're going to de-encrypt it. So how are you protecting that data today? Again, originated from a telco, hollow core fiber. How do we make fiber go faster, right, out of a telco? Even some of the most basic TV concepts, broadcast and terrestrial, all the things that we take for granted that have changed our world, is in my mind, it's hard to point to a major innovation that didn't have a landslide difference in the world, that telco was not somehow part of the innovation. But that's all in the past. How do we look to the future? And it's not so clear to me that those same innovations at the same pace are coming and that we're engaged with folks in the same way that we should do, because we're all focused on, hey, how do we rip this box in half and run software here and do software this and do an API thing? No one cares, right? They really don't. It's how do we make something that, when I get up in the morning, I think I need to do this thing that's this innovation that has changed my life. That's where we really, when we come up with stuff like that, boom, we're flying as an industry. If we don't do that, it's stuff on the side that eventually we think, why are we doing this? And we kill it.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Paul?
I mean, I think there's clever stuff going on all the time that we don't necessarily see. When you don't want to appear to be a fanboy for BT, but if you go to Martinshire and spend some time talking to their cybersecurity people, the stuff that they do behind the scenes to secure the networks, it's astonishing. It really is. We don't ever see that level of innovation. Probably my favourite one of most recent years was we were an investor in something called Bristol is Open, which was a smart city project in Bristol, funnily enough, which was Bristol is Open is it doesn't exist now, but it was a JV between the council and the university. And they created this open kind of sandbox platform for IoT, for smart cities. And with them and us and BT, we created the first 5G public showcase in the world, which was called Layered Realities in Bristol in Millennium Square. And it actually showed, and it was open to the public, so people could come in, because we were going, what's this 5G thing? A journalist once said to me, what's the difference between 4G and 5G? One. But
boom.
Yeah, here all week. But it was great because people came in off the street and they could get a handset and they could see the layered realities of the port back in the 1800s. So just augmented reality. It was fantastic. Clearly not a particularly powerful use case from a monetary perspective, but it actually showed the technology and what it could do. And that was probably my favourite. It was all about collaboration.
Yeah, it was a terrific use case. I remember filming there. It was flipping freezing as well.
Oh, it was raining. It was horrible.
Blimey.
Awful.
Right, lots of examples there. Yes, please, Alex.
Justin Paul, I've worked for a few network equipment vendors in the past, and probably one of the most soul-destroying things to face was the rigors of the e-auction, where effectively there was a push to commoditize everything you did and get it down to the lowest possible price. So I think my question is, does the way that service providers purchase equipment and technology actually work counter to the idea of innovation, because innovation was sort of taken out of that process?
Okay, does cost trump innovation? Who wants to,
Maybe a service provider again.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the relationship between service providers and vendors is changing a lot. And we have seen last year when we had a lot of pressure on energy cost, we did a lot of co-innovation together with our vendors community to be quick and enabling, energy saving features. We are seeing that also with co-developing together use case on top of our big data platform. We're seeing that with cloud providers as well. So I think in general, I see this relationship between service providers and vendors is going towards co-innovating, co-developing together, and being more proactive, and rather than reacting to an RFP, which I agree becomes very much, compliancy and then taking the price down. Of course, that's when you want to do an RFQ. But if you want to do proper innovation, we have to co-innovate together, and we're doing that.
Yeah, so I'd also agree. It's definitely thinking about moving away from calling them vendors to partners, especially in the B2B world where you're providing and creating solutions. So, one of our great partners here, Nokia, we've been working together to provide private network solutions. And in one way, we're creating products and solutions together with a recent product, which is a small plug-and-play private network, but then also going to customers together or collaborating and looking at how we offer our solutions, both from commercially and technically. So supporting it much more than an e-auction. It's much more on a solution-by-solution basis or a partner agreement. So definitely.
Azhar?
Yeah, I think, look, what did Domain 2.0 do to AT&T? What was it all about? It was about first driving prices down. What did that do? It changed the whole model in terms of disaggregation. So sometimes these pressures can also drive innovation, and you won't think where it comes from, in what area, whether it's a business model innovation, whether it's technology innovation, whether it is how you consume things. So I think it's while it's true that you may think that not enough R&D dollars are coming into the NEPs, but if the NEPs don't innovate and provide it at a cheaper cost, better capability, then somebody else is going to do it. A startup is going to do it. The whole Open RAN conversation. Why are we here in this whole Open RAN conversation? What was it all about? It was opening up those different interfaces so that anybody's radio can interoperate with anybody's RAN capability. Are we there yet? Maybe not. But it is fundamentally commoditizing some of those technologies that were previously a domain of a few to now democratizing it across everything. And that's actually fundamentally driving innovation.
Great, thanks, Azhar.
So having seen this from both sides of the fence now, it's kind of amusing. And what I would say is what are our measures? So how are you measuring value, right? Is it because the box is this big, or it's got this logo on it, or it's got some sort of software on it? How do you measure it, right? And that process is about measurement. And if we make something that's so hard to measure that you have to go through that process, then shame on us. But at the same time, I look at our industry as a whole, and our measures are a joke. We don't measure the quality of our people or their ability to learn. We don't measure how quickly they learn. We then don't understand what capabilities that we've got in our organizations, and we let people who are really great disappear because we didn't even know how good they were. And it's an endemic thing through every stage of our industry. How good are we at, how good is our network performing? How good is it really performing versus, Philip used NPS, a measurement I hate because it's kind of meaningless. For me, it's like, well, how quickly is things downloading? How are we comparing to the competition? What's our customer expectation? So the reason we have that is because that allows us to measure. Make another way of doing measurements, phenomenal. People will change. But I think right now it's very difficult. And what I've learned is every other industry does RFPs as well. If you're putting tires on a car, why did they pick Pirelli? Because they did an RFP and Pirelli were the best. Or at least how they measure it. So I think if you want to change that, then we've got to figure out how we measure differently.
Yeah, I agree. And just on this point, we used to measure value through, I still remember, creating deck of unique selling point of capability of technology. We don't do this anymore. We create value prop, and we also define user story, like the cloud providers do, right? User story, clearly define what you want to see through an innovation project. You know the users, you know what the expected value want, you do an MVP, and then you prove whether you want to productize or not. So I think even the product planning, everything has changed, as well as the way what we want to sell. We want to sell outcome and experience rather than a specific product, a specific technology.
Great, thanks very much. We're going to go a little bit longer because we've got a question from our online audience, I believe, Ray.
Well, it's just to keep the online audience happy as well, and so they know that their comments are being seen and heard. This is more of a comment, really, and it's telco CFOs are risk averse and want to see proof of a market before investing in new technology or service areas. How are telcos expected to innovate without proper investment?
Can I respond to that? That's absolute nonsense. I mean, honestly, I feel for my finance colleagues who take the blame for us doing a bad job of articulating a case. Every time I've gone for money with a case, I always got it. And it was all about being sure about what the benefits were, being sure about what the outcome was, and being sure about what the timetable was. And also, the last time we did a project like this, we screwed these three things up. We're not going to do that again. Anyone who uses finance as an excuse, go talk to your manager and headbutt them because it's bullshit. Seriously, it's utter bullshit. It winds me up when people say that. It's never about finance, it's about value. And if it was your money, would you spend it that way? Sorry, it's one that makes me rant a lot.
We also spoke about the mindset change. That's exactly where the mindset change needs to happen.
Right, well, on that combative final note...
What he said, by the way.
Yeah, what Neil said. We must draw the discussion to a...
Sorry, that gentleman right at the back there has had his hand up on several debates, and I don't think we've picked him, and I think we ought to let him ask a question.
Oh, are we going to let Nigel in? Yes. Yes, we're letting Nigel in by popular demand. Nigel, I didn't see you at all.
Thanks, Guy. I'd just like to go back to the question here, because it was a really interesting one about procurement. And when we look at an industry as a whole and we're talking about innovating, we talk that the service provider is working with the supplier. How often do the service providers work with the service providers across what's driving the technology? And I think very much when you look at other sectors such as the airline industry, where organizations such as Star Alliance come about because of cost of procurement and cost of ownership. How does that reflect in our sector, or does it not at all?
Anyone got a quick comments? We went over time, but this is certainly worth commenting.
It's driven on wholesale. That's the engagement that's typically there, unless you try to do a strategic alignment, which becomes, and this is the maturity. I think that's the point being made, which is we then have a fight about who owns the customer. Right? We're building this network for you globally, and actually it turns out most of the sites aren't here. So, who's going to own this customer? And it's quite an immature conversation in that world.
It's also the netcos as well, isn't it? It's just like MBNL, and there is some alignment, I think, but I don't think it's easy.
Yeah.
And you've got the tower companies appearing now, which are providing a common infrastructure, and they're doing that because the MNOs want that off their balance sheets, obviously. So, but there is some cooperation, but it's not, it's difficult.
It's not
difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think on an infra level, we are collaborating when it comes to services driven by wholesales, and we're trying to innovate there in different way. Maybe innovating the portals and integrating with geospatial analysis, so that our other services providers know where our network is, or using the math API and the blockchain as well to enable automated settlement for intercarrier services. So there are things that we are doing, but obviously there is still room for innovation.
But I think there's just one thing to build on. In a previous telco I worked at, I found out that we were buying Telecom Italia tails to places that were on net because they could quote quicker. I mean, what?
Yeah.
So I broke the quoting system for Telecom Italia, which highlighted the problem, and we fixed it. And immediately we're able to actually get a return on assets that are already there. So, there's so many different things about this, but it's kind of like, are you using your own assets effectively enough is another area. Because everywhere I go where you see, these big organizations, there's someone who's kind of, for good reason usually, bypassing the process.
Great. Well, that's a much nicer way to end our discussion. Much more pleasant. I'm feeling much more jolly. Right. Thank you very much, everyone. This does mean that we need to come to our vote now. So can we remind ourselves of what the motion was? Telcos are primarily reacting to, rather than generating, innovation. Are you for Graham or are you against with Chris? Don't forget, for the final time this year, your Paddle Pros, please do not steal them and take them home. They're very expensive. Apart from the ones at the back, you can have them.
Completely agree.
Please activate your Paddle Pros now. Oh, heck. Got to work this one out a bit here. This is a slightly close one, but I think the Greens have just about got this. I think the Greens have just about... Yeah, I'm going for Greens. Green has it. Right, thank you very much, thank you very much.
By the way, his wife's lovely.
Yeah. That is it. Graham wins again. Hooray! Our thanks to TelecomTV's excellent production team here and behind the scenes for putting all this on. Our thanks to our speakers, our guests, our expert witnesses, our online audience. Big round of applause. Thank you very much.